Hello, welcome back to the Everything is Black and White podcast. I'm Andrew Musgrove. He is Sam Mulner, and this is the Mulner and Musgrove Show. Today, we're going to talk about Newcastle's saviour, maybe, potentially, hopefully, in Mr. Lewis Hall, returning, we think, this Saturday to Newcastle United starting 11. Unfortunately, against Manchester City, probably not the game Eddie Howe would have wanted to throw him into, but he's left with no choice. Can Lewis Hall be the reason, at least up until the new year, that Newcastle's season finally gets into gear in the Premier League? All that to come. First things first, though. Sam, welcome back. You well?
Yes, are you?
I am. I'm all right. I'm all right. I'm surviving, as I mentioned with Mark yesterday. A little bit of illness has hit the household. How are you in?
Time
But
of
we're
year.
doing all right.
Time of year. Everyone's got a little bit. There's a little frog in the back of my throat, which is not ideal for when I've got commentary gigs at the back end and start of this week and the start of next week. But we'll soldier on. But yeah, no, it's good. And once again, it's nice to come out the other side of the international break relatively unscathed, and we can look ahead, which isn't always, well, it's usually really exciting to start looking ahead again, but yeah, I'm not too sure this time. It's a real big passage between now and Christmas for Eddie Howe and the side.
I mean, there, the introduction, I asked whether Lewis Hall is going to be the reason that things turn around. I guess what we have to say, first and foremost, is that whatever the reason things turn around, it has to turn around, doesn't it? You know, before we even get into Lewis Hall returning, as you mentioned, big few weeks coming up, and something has to change positively for Eddie Howe and Newcastle United.
Yeah, he can't be the sole reason, because there needs to be more than one for real kind of systemic change in the way our season's panning out, particularly away from home. But he can certainly be a big contributing factor. It'd be great to have him back. Tino Livramento can't be too far away. Obviously, the Wissa thing just rumbles on in the background as well, and issues with the wingers like we discussed last week. And look, what did we say about Voltemade? That we need him to be a number 9. Germany desperately want him to be a number 9. He's put in 2 fantastic number 9 appearances for Germany during this international break, scoring a lot of goals against some relatively poor sides, but nevertheless the signs are there that his positional play is there to be heeded if he receives the service.
Indeed. However, we will be hoping and keeping everything crossed that with the return of Tino Livramento, but obviously with the subject that we're talking about today, more focused on Lewis Hall, that will aid the service which has been lacking, because I think that's where we will start. Kieran Trippier, Dan Burn can't do the overlapping, haven't really got that relationship with the wingers in front of them. It's not all down to the full backs and time catching up with them, but that does have something to do with it. Can Lewis Hall, particularly on the left, Sam, help kickstart Anthony Gordon's domestic campaign this season? Or if it is indeed Harvey Barnes, can he have a little help there? And whoever it is, boost the service from the left?
Yeah, whoever it is, because we still don't know the state of Anthony Gordon's injury. Obviously, he pulled out the England squad, which was sensible. We'll probably hear more from Eddie Howe towards the back end of the week, won't we, ahead of the game on Saturday tea time. But yeah, whomever it is, whether it be Gordon or Barnes, yeah, of course, it'll make a huge difference. Yes, offensively is the sort of more natural place to start when analysing these things, but defensively he'll make a big impact as well, and that can't be lost sight of. But yeah, attacking obviously gives you that bit of extra dimension. Burn does get up and down when playing at left back, but obviously with a man of his size at 6'6", 6'7", 6'7", one for the kids there, the youth. Do you know about this 6'7" thing? I suppose your child's a bit too young.
I've got no idea what you're going on about.
You'll know when your nippers get older. There's a thing going around. Kids, my 2 kids just go around saying 6'7". It's utterly weird, but it's a thing apparently. Showing how old we are. But yeah, he's going to be utilised for his height, and like Eddie Howe said at the end of the Brentford game, he didn't want to take Burn off because of his height and whatnot, which was sort of it was an infuriating answer actually, which was really weird for Eddie Howe, because normally when he speaks he makes total logistical sense, but that didn't to me. There's plenty of height in that team. Just because Dan Burn won't be there, but that's why that's his strength. That's what they play to. Fair enough if he's going to be deployed at left back. But look, Lewis Hall's obviously more natural there. He's more nimble, more adept to getting up and down, as you mentioned there, helping the winger on the overlap, and can cut inside. He's got a goal in him as well every now and again. And yeah, it's the way he's progressed over the last couple of years. It's exciting to have him back, and we need him back. This is a key run of fixtures, as we say, over the next few weeks. The derby's in sight. There's a big couple of Champions League away games in there as well. But first and foremost, the league form has to change.
Indeed, it does. Like I said, probably not the best game to start them with on Saturday, and we'll get into that in a moment. But it's interesting, going forward, the difference that he will make, as we've mentioned, to the wingers. But I also think the confidence within the back line, because you can see when you watch games back that Sven Botman doesn't want to give the ball to Dan Burn, especially in tight areas, especially when Dan Burn is backed up onto the touchline. He doesn't want to do it. Because I don't think they've got the confidence in Dan Burn to get him out of a sticky situation. I think he's very easy to get the ball back off if you're an opposition player. Now, with Lewis Hall, I think there is more confidence that you give him the ball, he'll carry it forward, or at the very least, he won't play you into trouble. So I think that confidence is going to be absolutely key, because we talk about the lack of service going forward to Nick Voldemort, and the midfield hasn't been where it's at, but it starts at the back, doesn't it? If you're a team that wants to have control of the ball and you want to play out from the goalkeeper, then if your centre backs aren't confident at giving it to your left back, then you're in a real spot above. And I think that's going to be one of the key differences Lewis Hall brings to this side. The likes of Botman will feel a lot more comfortable giving him the ball.
Yeah, more nimble, as I say. There's the players will have greater confidence of Hall's ability to nip one past the advancing forward on the right, and relieve that sort of pressure in that area of the field. And yeah, more balanced side. And a lot is spoken about how set pieces have become such a huge thing, which they have, which I'm not overly a fan of. I don't think it's been a particularly good season, generally speaking, in the Premier League. But teams are still obviously playing out from the back, which we do. It's always uncomfortable at times, because it's not one of Nick Pope's strengths. But yeah, Hall out wide is obviously a lot more adept and nimble and trickier proposition for an advancing forward than Dan Burn would be at the ball at his feet.
Certainly so, and fingers crossed we get to see that in the flesh as soon as possible. In terms of that defensive improvement, Sam, we know Dan Burn lacks a little bit of pace. I mean, we don't want to go over all the ground, but Brentford, right from the off, he just didn't look comfortable in that position. Like we said a few weeks ago, he looked like a kind of man who had seen his future, really, and he knew the challenge that was coming his way. What does Lewis Hall offer defensively that Dan Burn just can't seem to offer on a consistent basis at left back?
Do you know? I don't think it's pace. I think it's acceleration, and there's a difference, because Burn is perfectly quick. Same as Lascelles is actually quite quick, but once they get going, it's the first 3 yards, which is where it can be won or lost, and makes all the difference. And that's what's so crucially important. So it's an acceleration issue, not an actual out and out pace issue. Yeah, Hall has obviously greater acceleration, younger man, naturally more gifted with speed, and is just such a more sort of natural wide player. I know he started as like a centre mid for Chelsea's academy way back when, but he does look so much more comfortable out wide, and how has utilised him before, like seeing a game out in the last 10 minutes or so on the left hand side of that midfield here and there. But yeah, he's so much more natural in that area. And yeah, like you say, wingers tend to be fast, so that acceleration element of it, to keep up, to not let them get away, so you are not playing catch up, is crucial, because Byrne, because of his lack of acceleration, was always playing catch up. And it was, I mean, again, like last week, like we said last week, every man and his dog knew that Dan Byrne should have been hooked before it even got to where it got to. So that was disappointing in that aspect. But obviously, Byrne's got the suspension, and you say it's a bad game for Hall to come back into. I don't think it is. It is what it is. It's not a bad game. We've done all right against City at home, not beating them, but got a couple of good draws. And even when we lost to them a couple of years ago, it was in the dying embers, and we were so unlucky. I think the issues are still more in the attacking third than rather our defensive third. But again, Hall will benefit both areas.
I guess in terms of getting someone up to speed, it's maybe not the worst game in the world, but in terms of him having an easy afternoon, which you might not want, you might want him to have a challenging afternoon. It's probably one of those where, you're not looking forward to it. In terms of Botman, because he had a dire game against West Ham and then against Brentford, a lot of people have jumped to his defence and said, well, actually, you've got to think about what he's doing to try and help Dan Byrne out. Now, I think that's an easy get out for Botman. I think there's an element of truth in it, but I think it's not like a 90% excuse at all. I think it's quite an easy thing to pin on Dan Byrne and say you're the reason Botman's not been up to scratch. But do you think with Lewis Hall coming back in, Botman's performance will improve? Because, like I say, in the eyes of some, he's been covering for Dan Byrne. We think with Lewis Hall, he won't have to do that.
He was being pulled out wide. He was being dragged out a lot more left than what you would want him to. So yeah, I agree. There is absolutely an element in that, a big element in that. I suppose we'll see. In theory, it should rectify itself, because we had been very, very leaky, and that early superb defensive form we've displayed has kind of dissipated a little bit. Chow's done obviously very well, but he has that. Yes, he has experience, and Trippier, who is past his prime, but he's still very, very good. And he's a fantastic talker on the pitch, and I love Kieran Trippier dearly. I'd still be giving him an extra year, hand on heart. I really would. Yes, Livramento, when he is back, probably has the right, I would say. Trippier, again, he's been superb, but it's a big ask for a right back who is sort of known for up and down, bombing on, getting crosses in, to play 3 games in a week. It's a big ask. It's a tall order. And that's been shown. Again, defensive frailties have been creeping in. We've not been anywhere near as solid, and Nick Pope gets the brunt of frustration. But there's a lot happening in front of him, and I get Pope has been no means perfect, but in the last couple of games, punching instead of catching, and this, that, and the other. He's not the only goalkeeper that punches when he should be catching. But there's a lot happening in front of him that shouldn't be. So the return of Hall and latterly Livramento should rectify that. It is the key word. Whether Botman's hit a bit of a rocky patch himself, time will tell. I would certainly be one of those leaping to his defence, though, because I think he is one of our best players. And I don't say that lightly. Botman is one of our best players.
Certainly going to be interesting to see what happens once Byrne returns from that suspension, and whether he can indeed, as me and Gibbo both agreed, we think might happen, oust Sven Botman, at least short term, which I know won't go down well with everyone. Ability wise, there's only one winner. However, I could see that happening. I just want to quickly remind everyone that this episode is sponsored by NordVPN. The link is in the podcast description box. Click the link, get your discount. 1 subscription, 10 devices, no risk with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Protect yourself while you're on public Wi-Fi, so on the train, in the cafe, in a restaurant. NordVPN is there to keep your details safe and secure from any potential hackers lurking in the shadows and you're supporting the podcast at the same time. Sam, I'm just looking back at Lewis Hall's stats.
Can I ask you a question
Go
first?
on.
Sorry to interrupt, but you made a point there before the wonderful sponsorship advert. My question to you is, do you want to see Dan Burn in the England squad for the World Cup?
I do, but not at the expense of Newcastle United's success on the pitch. And I know there's a lot of opinion that Eddie Howe maybe has Dan Burns' call up in the back of his mind. I have to say, I don't think that is the case, because if it is, then what on earth is going on? I really don't think a manager of Eddie Howe's ability, experience, profile has any one player's international dream at such a position in his mind that he's willing to play him to keep that dream alive, even if it's a detriment to Newcastle United. Now, the reason, for me anyway, I think there's a chance he could oust Botman. It's a little bit to do with the loyalty, but I think that decision would still be made on form and fitness. And you can't argue with the way Dan Burn has performed at centre back. He's been given a really difficult task of filling in a position in which his age and pace doesn't lend himself to that anymore. But he wants to play every game. He's never going to go knock on Eddie Howe's door and say, I'm not up to scratch to play at left back, because he wants to play each game. I think him at centre back, I've got no issues with that, as long as it's done in the right way, like I say, for form and fitness. If he's given the opportunity, he takes it, he performs really well. What's the issue?
Sven Botman. Because there's one of your best players who is world-class ability, who is in the process and in talks regarding a new contract. If he's out the team, he's going to be a lot more reticent to sign a new deal, especially when we are, whether you like it or not, staring down the barrel of next season no European football. That is at this moment a severe possibility. And you have Lewis Hall's England aspirations as well, because that left back spot is up for grabs. Nico O'Reilly did all right, did well. Wasn't really pressed for anything in the last two games for England, but I've never seen the appeal of Lewis Skelly. I don't get it. I think he'll probably end up playing for West Ham soon enough or something like that. I don't see him as ever being an Arsenal regular going forward. But Lewis Hall, for me, it should be the one that Thomas Tuchel can rely on to be that future England left back, and he's not going to do that at the moment unless he gets a good run of games. But then you have got the quandary between Botman, who has his own international aspirations. He's out the Dutch fold at the moment, and you know has lost a lot of credit in receipt of the likes of Van der Ven, who's phenomenal at the moment. But it's a little sort of horrible little love triangle going on at the moment that's got a lot of intertwined storylines, and it's going to develop throughout the season and into the summer.
But what I would say to you is, because I think you agree, you know, if Dan Burn is picked, it has to be on form and fitness and not this perceived loyalty.
Mm.
You can't pick Sven Botman, though, just based on the fact that he is the better centre back, because you can be the best centre back in the side, but if it's not working in terms of form or fitness, now fitness is a little bit different. I guess you could apply the same to form in a way. You need games to get back to that level. But I think it's the underlying reason for choice is the same, whether it's Dan Burn or Sven Botman. It can't be done on one aspect. It has to be done on form and fitness, really. So as good as Botman is, I don't think just because he's the best defender arguably at the club, maybe some would say Malik Chow, he doesn't bypass Dan Burn at all in my book. And I think the last two games, you look at it and there's a real argument to say that actually over the next couple of games coming up, he's maybe fighting for his first team future short term. And I wouldn't be surprised if Dan Burn comes in and starts.
I would be surprised, but is that not on how because of the lack of rotation as well? When we have European games midweek, why can we not whack Burn and share in for Leverkusen away, say, and then 3 days later at the Stadium of Light, See what I did there. Go back to Botman and Chow. I don't think there's. You can have too much rotation, so I've much got that at the back of my mind. But that I don't think there's probably been enough so far
It's
in that
interesting,
area.
isn't it? And it's maybe a topic for another podcast, but rotation is an art and it's a fine balance. And I don't envy Eddie Howe or any manager really trying to strike that balance, because I think on one hand, momentum's absolutely key. You know, that is one of the main ingredients to success in football. But obviously, when you've got as many games as Newcastle do, you do have to rest and rotate. But it's difficult to get that balance. And I'm not totally against players as long as they're fit, playing as many games as possible, because I think that momentum is key. And it's just a horrible thing to get right, and that's why they paid the big bucks. Maybe that's a discussion
Didn't Sir
for.
Bobby do something similar back in the day when we were in the Champions League? I'm not entirely sure. I'd have to check, but it was just a thought that occurred to me. But Sir Bobby was going through a phase when we were playing Champions League midweeks, and you could incorporate this with Aaron Ramsdale, who I know a lot of people want to see in the stick. So Steve Harper was playing in goal for Champions League games, and then Shay Given would play 3 days later back in the Premier League. Did he do the same with, Dabizas, O'Brien, Bramble, Aaron Hughes, so on and so forth? Because who's to say you couldn't play again? We use that Leverkusen Sunderland kind of thing. Could you not go to Leverkusen, play Ramsdale in goal, share and burn in front of him, and then go to Sunderland with Pope, Chow, Botman?
It goes back to the ability question, though, isn't it? Do you want to play your best? And again, the momentum argument. It's difficult.
I
I don't
don't
know what
think that I don't think playing Burn, Share, and Ramsdale is to any detriment at trying to go and win the game in Germany.
Well, let us know in the comments your thoughts on that and the art of rotation. Back to Lewis Hall then. Obviously, he did actually feature at the beginning of the season. He played 15 minutes against Liverpool, the second game of the season. He then played half an hour against Leeds in that 0-0 draw, and 90 minutes against Bournemouth. Then there was the hamstring injury, and that's what kept him out. And since then, it's been 13 minutes against Brentford and just over an hour in the League Cup against Bradford, which was back in September, and then the injury came into play. He's taken his time, hasn't he, with Lewis? Do you think that this Man City game has come ahead of schedule for what Eddie Howe would have liked for Lewis Hall?
No, I think it's about right, actually. And it was a slow introduction as well, because cast your mind back, he was injured before the recovery for the current injury, which was why, remember, that Livramento was playing left back and did an absolutely fantastic job. But no, I think it's about right. Went away with the 21s, didn't he? With England, did well. And like I say, I hope he's in Tuchel's mind for the World Cup, because I think he's a better long-term proposition than O'Reilly, who I am a big fan of, and obviously we'll see a lot more of him this coming weekend. But yeah, I think it's about right. He's had some minutes off the bench, and you could have maybe argued he could have been worth to have a bit more, but no, I think it's about right. I think the time is right, in terms of recovery. It has been a slow introduction, which is the right thing to do, because he's still a baby in footballing terms. We forget that because we've had him for so long, but he was a child when he played for Chelsea, so he's got a lot of experience for a lad of 21.
No fear from you that this hamstring injury might reoccur at some point? It's one of those injuries which you kind of grit your teeth at.
I always have fears for injuries when it comes to Newcastle United. We are we are perennially cursed when it comes to injuries. So I've always got that worry on my mind. When we had our previous striker, it was always a concern. But yeah, there's a lot of players that are always of concern. Hall is one of them. Livramento will be another one, because he's had massive injury woes in the past before he even came to us. So and the way he went off, remember, when he was injured on a stretcher in tears, was really concerning. So hopefully his recovery has gone well, and and Visser. Don't get me started on Visser again. But yeah, that'd be another one. But yeah, Hall. Yeah, I am concerned because I desperately want him to get a good run of games to the end of the season and stay injury free and go on and sort of live his dreams. I want him to thrive in a Newcastle shirt. I want him to go to the World Cup with England. I want him to make that England left back spot his own. And I want him to go on, sign a new contract for Newcastle and go on to become one of the best left backs in Europe. And he can do that, but he needs to stay injury free. So that's my concern for him. But you're in the lap of the gods, the footballing gods, aren't you?
Indeed. And we are kind of risking luck here, I guess, by recording this on Tuesday afternoon with Lewis Hall still to play one more game for England's under 21s. Now, the first game he played 70 minutes, got an assist as well. He was really, really good against Ireland. He most likely will feature, if not start, against Slovakia on Tuesday evening. Fingers crossed for Lewis Hall and our great content that he gets through unscathed. Let's just say he does, because he will, right? The gods are in our favour. How important have these two games been for Lewis Hall in terms of getting him back up to scratch, match fitness wise, do you think?
Vitally, because you need match minutes. Obviously, you can train as much as you want, and then you can go into a match, and then all of a sudden you need 3 pre-seasons again. That's the case for some injury-stricken players, which is pathetic. But Lewis Hall isn't that kind of player, and it will benefit him. They've been sensible with him, as you say. They're playing 70 minutes. Will he see the game out on Saturday? Maybe not. Maybe not. We might have to see Trippier go to the left, and who knows, Kraft might, or Cher might Howe's deployed Chow right back towards the last stages of games, or maybe we switch to a back three, or there's options, there's ways of wangling it around. He might not see out the full 90 on Saturday. It wouldn't be a surprise were that to be the case, especially when there are games coming up thick and fast. We've got Marseille, we've got Everton, there's those 3 games are very difficult. It is a tough balancing act, but successful clubs have to manage that, and it is a benefit going away with international duty, because there would be no point just spending 2 weeks just training away when you need match minutes.
Final question then. Lewis Hall, Sam, the saviour of Newcastle's season?
If you're relying on a left back to save your season, then things are getting pretty grim, and I don't think we're that sort of panic stations yet. It's not quite save or silence at maximum when he was coming back from injury under Steve Bruce. Yeah, he will be a big contributing factor, but he cannot be the saviour, because it needs more, unless he suddenly turns into Gareth Bale. And goes from left back to left-handed striker, just scores overhead kicks in Champions League finals. But yeah, I don't. Sorry, Lewis, I can't see that happening. But yeah, it'll be great to have him back. Big bonus, and to get him back. Hopefully, Livramento follow suit soon, because these games are massive and they're really difficult. Really difficult. You could make a case for any sort of results in the next 3 matches.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed. It's all victories. Can't see it happening, but we can hope. But it will be great.
Marseille will be very tough. Marseille might wake a few up.
Well, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But great to have Lewis Hall back. Like we say, we hope he comes through Tuesday's game against Slovakia, and then he'll be into the starting 11 against Manchester City, which hopefully will be an excellent game and a positive result for Newcastle United. Let us know in the comments or via social media your thoughts on the return of Lewis Hall. Myself and Simon will be back next week. Enjoy all the content coming up ahead of that game against Manchester City. Keep yourself safe out there, and we'll see you guys very soon.